Welcome to Access Asia, I'm Yuka Royer. This week, we'll look inside one of the world's fastest growing industries, cyber scams. Online fraud operations, often referred to as pig butchering schemes, target victims worldwide, but are mostly operated out of Southeast Asia. Huge scam centers are scattered across the Mekong region, many run by groups linked to Chinese mafia.
In Southeast Asian borderlands spanning Thailand, Myanmar, Vietnam, Cambodia and Laos, the scam business was valued at $44 billion a year by the end of 2024. That's equivalent to 40% of the Mekong region's official economy. And it's operating out in the open, with vast office complexes filled with workers from all over Asia and beyond. A workforce of 300,000. Some who came voluntarily, others brought there by a scam. The promise of a real office job. Only to be held against their will, forced to work 12 to 16-hour days, with some subjected to physical violence and even torture. Scamming in their turn unwitting victims online, with sham romances, fraudulent crypto schemes and other AI-assisted rackets. The industry developed suddenly when COVID-19 shut down casinos, halting other illicit activities, and many of the same actors turned their hands to online criminality.
Well, for more, let's bring in Jason G. Tower, senior expert at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. He joins us from Bangkok. Thank you for speaking to us, Jason. Now, it's an extremely lucrative industry, but why are these activities concentrated in Southeast Asia, and why are Chinese mafia so influential?
The scandemic that you see across the Southeast Asia region has grown out of China-linked offshore online gambling operations that were effectively displaced from China in the first decade of the 2000s, and which relocated to Southeast Asia, where they continued to tap a $20 to $40 billion market per year back in China. So these offshore online gambling operations, in order to be able to continue to tap that market, they developed some of the most sophisticated underground banking and money laundering syndicates in the world. And these syndicates started to effectively move money for all sorts of criminal actors, including actors involved in fraud. They also invested heavily in technologies, including cryptocurrency technologies, blockchain, fintech, really setting up and establishing all of the tools that you would need to be able to also operate large-scale fraud operations alongside offshore online gambling, which was often completely unregulated. So effectively what happened was by around 2016, you started to see a growing fusion between scam and fraud networks and these offshore online gambling networks. Operations increasingly became hybrid. You would see that cyber criminals would use offshore online gambling operations as a cover to perpetrate crimes, and that really the entire workforce, the technologies that were used in the online gambling were increasingly being deployed in what were more and more sophisticated forms of scams. And over the past couple of years, you've seen where China's crackdowns on these scams have effectively led to them going global, rather than this just being an activity that is Chinese criminals targeting victims in China. You now really have a global population that's being lured into these scam factories across the region, and they're also targeting a global population with scams.
It's creating a humanitarian crisis as well. Many scammers are forced into slavery. Just how widespread is human trafficking in cybercrime across Southeast Asia?
Every country in Southeast Asia has been impacted by it. There are estimates that in the range of 20 to 30,000 individuals from 11 ASEAN countries have been lured and trafficked into these compounds. Outside of the region, though, you also see where the harm is extensive. There are estimates that as many as 80 countries have had their nationals trafficked into these compounds that line borders and increasingly are also found found inland in epicenter countries in Southeast Asia. For Africa, there are 33 countries that have identified victims, with estimates that 15 to 20,000 Africans have also been lured into cyber slavery. So really the harm from trafficking, connected to these compounds is now global in nature.
Now, Jason, stay with us because we're going to look deeper into just how these scam centers operate. Journalists from a sister channel, France Télévisions, flew to Cambodia, which has emerged as one of the world's largest hubs for online fraud.
Behind these walls, thousands of scammers target victims around the world. This engineer fell into the trap when a young woman who presented herself as the manager of a company contacted him on Facebook. They kept chatting for a couple of weeks. Then she encouraged him to invest in crypto on a website she recommended.
She told me to invest some money, wait a few days, then withdraw it. So that's what I did.
He managed to withdraw €1,000. Reassured, he then made a dozen more investments. Suddenly, his money was blocked and his new friend had disappeared. He won't reveal the total amount he invested, but he lost the life insurance he'd inherited from his mother.
I realized that I got caught up in a vicious cycle, although there were many warning signs. I was in a dream, and this dream ended up being very expensive.
The scam follows a model that has spread across Southeast Asia. According to an American research centre, the industry's revenue is estimated at €12 billion, or the equivalent of 40% of the country's wealth. After weeks of convincing, a scammer agreed to reveal what happens on the inside.
It's dangerous for me to speak to you.
At the top of the criminal network sits a mafia. This former delivery driver joined the network 6 months ago.
Every morning, my boss sends me a list of 200 phone numbers I have to contact, hoping I'll get an answer. Then I start a conversation based on a very precise script that my company gives me.
Scammers even publish videos from inside these centres on social media, showing the large amounts of money they make. This man earns €500 a month. That's twice the average salary in Cambodia.
When I think about the work I do, I hate myself, because we are deceiving people. But it brings me a very good salary. Thanks to it, I managed to save money, and I hope that someday I'll manage to open my own business.
This French man also worked in one of these centres in the capital, Phnom Penh. He was recruited last June and earned €5,000 a month because French speakers are highly sought after.
In my building, there was a Spanish, German, Turkish and English department.
His mission, translate messages into French, allowing the scammers to target French-speaking victims.
I sent them, I don't know, 50,000 messages a day. It could be on Facebook, Snapchat. Personally, I worked on WhatsApp. In the room, all the agents applauded whenever there was a big deposit.
4 months in, he decided to quit.
I felt shame and remorse thinking about the people. I got a lot of replies. People were saying, "You took everything I had."
For many years, Cambodian authorities turned a blind eye to cybercrime. But pressured by foreign governments whose citizens are victims of the scams, they've now promised to put an end to the operations. For several months now, they've been stepping up police raids and posting their activity online. In this room, dozens of scammers are caught in the act, mid-conversation with their victims. But in Phnom Penh, the sector is still hiring.
Hello.
After just a few message exchanges, the team received a job offer by one of the scam centres through a middleman.
I work for a platform. This means a scam center. You shouldn't worry about the police. Before they arrive, they let us know 2 weeks in advance. Don't be scared. They tell the manager when they'll be here.
And if police shows up?
There's no problem. You take your money and you leave.
According to Cambodian authorities, 200 scam centres have been shut down in the space of a year.
But every day, new fraudulent messages continue to appear on phones around the world.
So, Jason, there are crackdowns, but it looks like a whack-a-mole situation. Why is it so difficult to stamp out these fraud centres and track down the real masterminds?
I think in part it's because these criminal networks became so deeply embedded in the epicenter countries, Cambodia, Myanmar, and Laos in particular. So now that you have all of this international pressure to crack down, you're starting to see more and more of a response from the Cambodian authorities. The problem is, and the same pattern plays out every time there's a raid or a crackdown, you're not really seeing a full demobilization of these scam facilities. Instead, what you're seeing is large numbers of individuals getting tipped off, leaving before police arrive. You're seeing, sort of a raid on a scam center lead to thousands of people flooding out onto the streets and then simply moving somewhere else. So the effectiveness of the law enforcement response has been very low. Criminal actors are given the opportunity and advance notice of when raids are coming, such that they're able to relocate. A lot of the masterminds behind all of this left Cambodia months ago and are now, setting up operations in other jurisdictions. We've seen where increasingly they're moving into South Asia, they're moving into Sri Lanka. We published a paper last week that identified 14 countries across Africa where there are growing signs that these criminal actors are becoming embedded there. And I think it's this broader culture of impunity that allowed major criminal actors to become, the heads of some of the largest corporate entities in Cambodia, all linked back to cybercrime and linked back to these scam compounds. That's what's ultimately now enabling cyber criminals to get away. And I think in the end, that's ultimately what's enabling the continuation of this crisis in countries like Cambodia.
Well, Jason Tower, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. And that's it for this week's Access Asia. Thanks for watching and do stay tuned for more world news here on France 24.